Alright, so I got a 2010 Polaris Ranger EV. And I've converted it a couple years back to having these 6-volt batteries in. So I have it on solar. That's why I have this plug-in on the front here. I'm basically charging right off my solar system, and I've been doing that. But I've developed this problem. Well, it's kind of unusual. It sounded to me like something in the rear end was, of course I've got it up off the ground, but when you're driving it, it's like it has this rattle back here. So I took the motor off and took it up to M&M Forklift in St. Louis, because it sounded to me like it was some type of something loose back here in the back end. And we'll kind of hear it here when it cuts off. I'm going to run it, but I just kind of want to show it to you. At any rate, the battery system was a real hoot. I mean, it had, 12 volts parallel together, and now it's just got one 6-volt string, L16 Trojans, which is about twice the amp hours. So it works really well. And it allows me to charge it off my solar system, which works really good. Charges fast, got a lot more battery, so it can last a lot longer. And I basically just use it on the farm, so I don't go very far. It never really gets more than maybe a mile or two a day, typically, of use. At any rate, this has a temperature sensor in it, so they pull the motor apart and they rebuild forklift motors, which are also 48 volts, so they were familiar with the motor. This is just not the typical kind of motor you use on forklifts, but they took it apart and tested it and said everything was, the motor was like new inside. And when I had it apart, I went ahead and pulled the rear end apart, looked inside. Everything looks like brand new basically inside the transaxle. All the gears, bearings, everything in there looks good. The whole unit's only got 130 hours on it, so it should look like new. At any rate, we're going to look at this error code that pops up on the controller here. Alright, so it's got an error because I've got it in gear. So I put it in neutral. There you go. So now I've got it in actually I've got the wheels locked, the rear in the center for the locked rear wheels at the moment. But maybe I wanted to hear the sound of what it's doing, because maybe that'll tell us something. As you can see, if you start out slow, you can go on, that's full speed right there, so it'll be like 25 miles per hour. We'll just turn the rear wheels, not the front, but the drive shaft, front drive shaft does spin, you can see that. Alright, so that's the issue. If you can get it going, it will continue to go and you can get it up to full speed. But when you first take off, even the least bit of too much throttle on it, or really even just a small hill or something, and it'll do this. Let's listen to it. reset it. It's been doing 7, so it's been doing. So let me just reset it here. Oh. I'll have to turn the key off and back on. Alright, so neutral. Put it forward again. And there, that's almost like a rear end. Now it's got a 2, which is called a sequence error. Now I don't know what the heck a sequence error is, but with a sequence error, I noticed, yeah, so you don't have to turn it off and it will reset, just kicking it into neutral. Put it back into forward. Here how it like shudders. And when you're driving it, it's the same thing. It's like it shudders real bad. So it felt to me like the rear end was loose, is what I thought. And there's your wrenches on. Oops. Alright, so turn that into neutral. Turn it back. Let me try and see if I can get that, do that a little bit better, because it'll makes a little more noise. Alright, well that time it did a 7. See? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that time it did a 7. So if it does a 7, then you gotta turn it off. Turn it back on. And it'll do it in this single rear wheel drive. We'll do single this time. And you can tell the difference between single. If I hit the brake, it'll stop that wheel and the other one will continue to turn. It did it so fast. Okay, that's a 2 sequence error. Let's see if I can stretch it out a little bit. Yeah, you hear that little shaking noise, or I don't know what you call it, but at any rate, shuddering is the only thing I can think of. And at any rate, I thought these bearings in here, because these do have a little bit of play in them, but really that spline has a slight amount of play in it, but the bearings inside are perfectly tight. So I really kind of took it apart for nothing. And the motor they tested was fine. So I'm not quite sure what the shudder is.